What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee House. Before we dive into the episode, I just want to say Virtual Coffee House is completely non monetized, it's completely free. It will stay this way forever. It's a way of us giving back as part of our HPMS Ventures Foundation. We host this podcast for the sole purpose of helping musicians, right? Helping music students. This is a podcast for high performance musicians, right? We bring on career tips, we bring on college audition advice, music school tips, anything you can think of, entrepreneurship, music business, anything to serve musicians as much as possible. Because of that, so the only way to support us is really leaving a 5-star review. And if this podcast really impacted your life, you learned something, please, if you can write us a written review, that would really help us for the podcast, help us with the algorithm. So I just want to say, please do that if you can. That's the only thing we ask you to do. It's not monetized. If you can also share this video, share this episode, share this stream, whichever way you're listening or watching this podcast right now, we really, really appreciate that. I also want to say we work really, really hard on publishing these episodes. It takes hours to just edit the content alone. I work very, very hard on bringing these tremendous guests on the show. They are literally the best in the music industry. And I always have a passion for serving people and making an impact on people's lives, especially those who are struggling, those who are younger than me, and those who feel so lost in their application process for music schools and trying to figure out what is the best way to get in the schools they want to get into, to find the music career that suits them the best. Okay, so typically you will literally spend $200, $300 per hour just to have private lessons or conversations with these guests. But I try my best to make it happen for you for free. So I just hope I can impact as many people as possible. Another way of really helping us is to post on your own social media of what you learned from this episode using hashtag Virtual Coffee House, using hashtag high performance musicians. And if you are really, really struggling with your music applications right now, you are a high school music student, you want to go to music schools, but you feel lost, you can always send us a DM with your question. You can also check out my startup, HPMS Venture. Just Google HPMS Venture. It will take you to our startup page. We have our coaching programs. You can also schedule one-on-one consulting sessions with us. We have helped a handful of music students get accepted into their top choices, Eastman, Juilliard, schools in Europe, you name them. So if you really need help, definitely check it out. Now let's get into the content. Great.
Okay, so where should we start?
Hi, Mr. Cohler. Thank you so much first of all for being here. It's such a pleasure to host you. And
My
so
pleasure.
last time we spoke, it was actually 10 years ago. I don't know if you still remember that. But I will start by showing you a photo. Hopefully that will recall some of our
Okay.
beautiful memories here. I'm pretty sure you don't remember this at all, but there it is.
Let's
I
see.
framed this.
Oh yeah, that's in up in Shenyang.
That's right. Yeah.
That
Do you
was
remember
I think
this?
that was my last visit up to the Shenyang Conservatory when Dong Dejun was still up there. Now he's down
Yep.
in the place near Shanghai. What's the name of that town again?
Hangzhou is in the south.
Huh,
Yep.
right, yeah, and that's the new conservatory down there. But yeah, he was up
Exactly.
in I knew Mr. Dong since 1997.
Wow.
It was the
Yeah.
first time we met. So, and I was up
Yeah.
at the Shenyang Conservatory many times.
And I look at this. And by the way, this is the heavy. I framed this. Um, 2011,
2011. Yep. So
10
that's
years
11
ago.
years ago. So I'd been to the Shenyang Conservatory many times, even before that conservatory was built. The one you're showing there is the new Shenyang buildings.
Wow.
I was there
Amazing.
when we had the master classes in a room that had no heat, and everybody wore their winter jackets inside, and they didn't have the concert hall in the new building, and But when you were there, it was already all new facilities. So it was beautiful then.
Yeah, I imagine that probably was before I was born because that at that time, 2011, I was 10 years old. That was my second year starting playing the clarinet, actually.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I wasn't speaking too much English because I was very little. And that was so special to me because that was not only my first master class ever, but also my first ever master class with an international artist.
Uh-huh.
So
Cool.
that was just amazing for me. I still remember you taught me how to circular breathe, which
Uh-huh.
we had a dinner at this very fancy place. You were sitting in the middle. I walked to you and you taught me how to circular breathe. I experimented and then worked conceptually. And then you told me I play the polka dance, which, a
Uh-huh.
lot of Chinese
Right.
students play
The
that.
clarinet polka, yeah.
Clarinet polka, yeah. And then I was doing trills for once, and you're saying you should do the trills for twice.
Yeah.
And I still remember that because that was very first time ever. So it's still up there. It's amazing. And then after that, I've been just searching for you for however I can. I can because I just don't. I didn't know your name. I didn't know. We didn't have any contact exchange or anything. But thanks to Facebook, I guess. Technology is amazing to find you finally.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I go to China quite frequently. In fact, um, I've been to China maybe 20 times, starting
Yeah,
back in 1970 and 1997. So that's almost, what is that, 25 years ago now, right? It's almost 30 years.
yeah,
Um, and in fact, I had a new big tour of China scheduled in March of last year when
amazing.
COVID hit. And my
Mhm.
first city that I was supposed to go to, that I was scheduled and confirmed, was Wuhan.
Oh
and,
wow, bummer.
and and then I got a text message, WeChat message from the professor in Wuhan saying, "Oh, we
Yeah.
have a virus here. You better not come.
Oh
We'll
yeah.
schedule it later." So then I had a 5 city tour scheduled all over China, north of China, south of China, everywhere. And so he contacted me and he said that we have a virus here. You shouldn't come. So I said, "Okay, no problem. We'll do it next time." And I contacted Mr. Dong, your teacher,
Uh-huh.
down in Hangzhou, and immediately scheduled to go there. And he confirmed, and I was all set to go there instead of Wuhan. And then about maybe 5 days later, it was very quick. He had confirmed it. He said, "Great, everything's fine, perfect." 5 days later, he texted me back and he said, "No, we're having to shut down. We can't have people here in Hangzhou either now." I said,
Yeah.
"Why? That's far away from Wuhan."
Right.
And they said, "No, no, yeah, but they're shutting it down." I said, "Okay, well, I'll schedule Guangzhou or something way away from there." And again, that got shut down. And even up in the northwest of China, Langzhou,
Yep.
that got shut. And then everything was shut down about 5 days later. And so the whole trip got canceled. But otherwise, I would have been doing another big tour of China last year. So I've got to reschedule that, hopefully, maybe for later this season, maybe in the fall or in this next spring.
Mhm. Yeah, I hope that work out because I mean this past year has been such difficulty for all of us. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
musicians, especially just without concerts and stuff, it's really tough. But I think people are doing a lot of virtual stuff like this and other stuff. That's innovative and I think it's really good for the classical music industry, especially.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's been fun meeting with people all over the world online.
For sure,
Um,
yeah.
that's been kind of a cool outcome of this. But, financially, it doesn't do a lot. And private lessons online are perfectly fine. If you're doing a private clarinet lesson or something, I think that works great. If you have as long as you have your microphone set up well. I
Hmm.
work with my
Yep.
students to get a good microphone set up with good audio quality. And you use something like Clean Feed or another kind of feed that has good quality sound, then you can have it's the same as having a lesson live virtually. But if you go over a bad sound link, you can't really hear all the details. And so it's important that the sound quality be good.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about pre-COVID, right? So you were really active in performing solos and concerts, all of, but you're also conductor and you travel internationally quite a lot, as you said many times to China. So I'm really curious, how do you balance the jet lags and then just how to stay up on top of everything, with the huge time zone, that stuff.
Usually the jet lag doesn't bother me so much. When I go somewhere, usually arrange it, especially if I'm going to the Far East. I usually arrange it so I arrive sort of mid or late afternoon, and you kind of sleep on the plane. And when you get there, you just, have dinner and go to sleep. So you get a lot of sleep that day when you're traveling. And and then I find it's not much trouble. Maybe the first day or something late afternoon, you start to get a little tired, but I find the jet lag doesn't bother me at all because once you get into the classes and performances and rehearsals and whatever you're doing, it's energizing. So I've never had much trouble with jet lag. Some people do, I know, but if you can sleep on the plane, I'll tell you one thing. One secret for sure
Yeah.
is you have to use. See these things?
Headphones, yeah.
These are Bose noise canceling headphones.
Uh-huh.
So whenever I travel on an airplane, I'm wearing these. They cut out all the noise of the engine and so forth. Because if you're
Oh yeah.
listening to the engine noise the whole way, that's very tiring. People don't realize it. Listening to loud noise for long periods of time is tiring. But you cut it
Exactly.
out. I can listen to music on these. Don't hear anything. I can't hear the people arguing next to me or the baby behind me crying.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
all gone, and then I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I use one of those similar ones too. By the way, this video is not sponsored by Volt. just
Yeah,
just
no, it's
kidding,
not.
just kidding. All right. Yeah, yeah, they're great. They're great. Yeah, just because I do fly a lot just for school and all that stuff. It usually if I don't sleep well on the plane, it takes up to like 7 days for me to adjust, and it's a big mess. I'm glad it's fine for you. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, because you look much healthier now. I mean, you look great before, but you look even better now. Just amazing.
Yeah, I think when I was in Shenyang in 2011, I was a lot heavier than I am now, and so yeah, I'm in
Right.
good shape. I at one point, I forget when, about 5 or 6 years ago,
Uh-huh.
I lost a lot of weight, got in shape, and that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, a good musician, also a good athlete, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about so again, you do a ton of stuff. So that's a vast experience in multiple areas in the music industry. Like what do you think, for example, is the advantage of that, or let's say disadvantage to just focus on one thing? Because a lot of us going to school, like heading into our careers, we think we would be this soloist, or we will be this principal clarinet of one orchestra. What do you think is the importance of making things a variety of different careers out of your playing?
Well, I think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations that people are given in music schools, and then
Right.
there's a lot of information, important information, that they're not given, and that's mostly the fault of administrations and faculties of music schools. I'll give you an example. I would say, as a performing and teaching musician, the most important thing, if you want to be a performer, is
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn how to make recordings. Now, I had proposed, and the reason you have to learn how to make recordings, and I don't just mean learn how to go and play, I mean learn how to actually make the recordings yourself. Because if you're going to be a performer, you got to take lots of auditions in your life, and
Yep.
whether it's a competition or an orchestra or a scholarship audition, whatever the audition is, you're going to have to take lots of auditions. And nowadays, especially, most of those auditions require a recording first,
Exactly. Yeah, the pre-screens.
right?
Yeah.
You can't even go to the first round until you give them a recording. So if you submit bad recordings, you're not going to get past the first round anywhere. So I think the most important thing, beyond learning to more important than learning to play your instrument, is learning to make a recording. And yet no music schools teach that, none. And
Exactly.
so I've been telling all the music schools where I teach that I should teach. I've had a recording company for 30, 40 years,
Right.
and I've offered to teach it at Boston Conservatory, at Longy, at NEC, all the schools where I have taught. And none of them wanted it because they're run by administrators and musicians who don't understand what they don't know. And
Mm.
they're not interested in what they don't know. But so about 3 years ago at Longy, where I now teach, they decided in general that students should do more project oriented things. And I said, well, the most important project for a music student is making a recording. What could be more important project than that? A concert is not a they talk about concerts as projects. Concerts are not projects. Concerts are concerts. You know,
They don't last.
concert is a concert is a concert. It happens
That's right.
once, you advertise it, you make a poster, you play some stuff, people come, and that's it. Recording is 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more important. Why? For example, my recordings, I'm the most, probably the most recorded clarinet soloist in the world, okay? And my recordings that I made, even the earliest one was back in 1991 or 2. So what's that? That's 30 years ago. Those recordings are still played all over the world and listened to by people all over the world today. Okay. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have heard my recordings. Now, how many people, if you add up every concert that I've ever played in my lifetime, it probably doesn't add up to more than, I don't know, 20,000 people, maybe, right? So one recording reaches way more. And by the way, that when you make a recording, it's played on the radio. Nowadays, it's played on the internet. It's streaming. They have physical CDs. They have everything. It's on 1 million websites, et cetera, right? Back then, it was mostly radio and CD players and in your car. But nowadays, it's everywhere. So, and whether it's making an audition or making a solo career or playing for a competition to get money to go to school or something like that, any of those things, you have to make a good recording. So this is the most important thing to be taught. I now teach a course in that at Longy for the last 3 years that I designed. As far as I know, it's the only course like that in the world. And by the way, I don't, there are schools, there are engineering schools where they teach you engineering, like microphones and all that stuff.
Right.
That's not what the musician needs to know the entire process. How do you come up with a cover design? How do you come up with a concept? How do you write the liner notes? How do you plan the recording? Where do you place the mics? How do you edit the recording? How do you balance the recording? How do you EQ? All that stuff. So recording is critical. The other kinds of skills that are critical, again, that they don't teach and they should be teaching at music schools, is how to make and manage websites. Some of the schools now have a little course and they'll call it portfolio or something. They'll say, go to Weebly and make a website, but that's not really anything about websites. So I have for many years been in the computer business too. So I write software, I do web design, I do everything that has to do with computers, And those skills, if you don't have them, you can't promote yourself. And if you can't promote yourself, you can't have a professional career in music because nobody's going to promote you. The only job where you don't have to promote yourself in music is if you're extremely lucky and you get a job in a major orchestra. And as Frank, retired but long-time principal clarinetist of Cleveland Orchestra, right, he said to me once, Jonathan, you don't understand. The job in the Cleveland Orchestra was so easy. It was so easy. I said, well, what do you mean, Frank? It sounds pretty hard to me. You got to play all this stuff. He said, yeah, but most of the stuff we've played 1 million times. We just show up. They put the music on the stand for us. We just show up. We just have to play this stuff that we know for the most part, He said, it's so easy. And that's, I don't think it's so easy. I think that's an exaggeration, of course. But what he's saying is he doesn't have to market it. He doesn't have to promote it. He doesn't have to sell the tickets. He doesn't have to record it. He doesn't have to design it, etc. So, but how many people get a job like that? Tiny, tiny number. And it's a matter of huge luck. I mean, all the guys who have those jobs are very talented clarinet players, but they're also extremely lucky because for every one of them that has that job, there's another 100 who are just as good who could have that job too if they were the lucky ones.
Right, exactly.
So they were lucky. They were in the right place at the right time and they were prepared. They always say, there is no such thing as luck, but, I like to say it's true. Luck is a huge part of something like that, but it's not lucky that you're prepared. So you never know when the opportunities are going to come. And the ones who succeed ultimately are the ones who are prepared, and then the luck comes along. Because if you're not prepared, the lucky situation comes, you're not ready for it, you don't get it. So guys like Frank, they had a lot of luck, but he was also prepared, and he nailed that, and he got that job, and he was there for, I forget how long, but 40 or 50 years. So yeah, so things like making a website, like marketing, like the stuff you were talking about, entrepreneurship, making recordings, designing and running festivals, your own festivals, competitions, outreach, all of these kinds of things are stuff that if you want to have a career in music, you better learn how to do it, because nobody's going to do it for you unless you're extremely lucky. You win the lottery, right?
Yeah, I agree with 1,000% on that. I mean, yeah, I mean, orchestras take, I don't know how many, like maybe a dozen or more, 2 dozen jobs in total for the major orchestras for clarinet
Right.
players only. And every job, whenever jobs open, I don't know, in a decade or something,
Exactly. Or 2 or
500
3
people,
decades.
you're right, and 5 people were not auditions, and they are all great players because you do have to cover your own cost of travel and everything. If you're not prepared, most people don't choose to show up, and at the end they only take one. So
Right. My uncle, I had an uncle, or actually, I guess a great uncle, um, who was a clarinet player in Chicago, and he had this say. He said, "If you're the third best," this was an exaggeration, but he said, "If you're the third best clarinetist in Chicago, you're out of a job."
I do
You know,
think that's reasonable. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's really true. It's even more than that, because it's not third best in Chicago. Because if a job opens up in Chicago, people come from all over the world.
so
Even a
true. Yeah,
small orchestra, even small orchestras, B rank orchestras or C rank orchestras, if a job opens up, they get hundreds of applicants for the one job. And if you're a computer programmer, you can go to thousands of jobs in any one city. But how
exactly,
many jobs are there for an orchestral clarinet that pays a living salary in Chicago? There's one.
exactly. Yeah, and yeah, and when you try to implement those together, then the potential is really huge because there's no experts in both fields and can combine them together. I am very interested in that. Let's keep moving on for that. It's because I know you went to Harvard for undergraduate and you studied physics there.
Yes.
That's really interesting because I mean the one of the biggest reasons I chose Northwestern over like a conservatory is really that I want to leave myself open with other opportunities because I can play. Um, Maybe I can get in orchestra if I'm really lucky, but I do want to leave my options open because here's one big difference I see between university students coming and they choose to be musicians versus conservative students. They kind of don't know how to do anything else besides music. So
Right. Well,
yeah,
that's why I chose Harvard. When I was going to college, a lot of my friends, I had been going to Tanglewood in the Young Artist
right,
program and
right.
doing. I was in Allstate. I did all of that stuff. But even in high school, I was doing lots of things. I was on the math team. I was on the soccer team. I was on chorus, music, playing the clarinet. But when I went to college, many of my music friends were going off to Juilliard and New England Conservatory and here and there. And I decided I didn't even apply to any music schools, because I said, look, if I go to Harvard, I can do all the music I want. In fact, this is an interesting fact that most people don't know. If you look at in the United States, we have this thing called the Presidential Scholar Program, where every year the president gives awards to a bunch of high school students in all different areas.
Yep.
Well, almost every year, and if you look at the number of kids who've won this, the top winners of the Presidential Scholar and Music Awards, the students go to Harvard. So the best musicians in the country go to Harvard. Now, some of them, obviously go to Curtis or Juilliard or whatever, but the largest number go to Harvard. And so at Harvard, the difference is because there's no performing music major,
Right.
you can do whatever you want. So if you're self-motivated, like when I went there, I immediately formed a new organization, which still exists today under a new name, but it was called the Harvard Radcliffe Ensemble Society. and it consisted of all the best musicians at the school, and we just did chamber music together, and we did concerts almost every month at Sanders Theater, one of the best concert halls in the world. And where can you do that? And we ran them ourselves. Didn't No
Mm-hmm.
permission from anybody. You can't do that at a music school. Forget
That's
about
right.
it. They tell you what to do every minute of your life, right? So
Exactly. Yep.
I we and they have an orchestra. You can do your own chamber music. They have plenty of courses in music history, because they do have. If you want to take musicology, you can major in that, um, and you can then study with whatever teacher you want in the Boston area, and they pay for half of it. So I found by going to Harvard, I could do everything I wanted to do in music, totally design it myself, not be constricted by what the school is saying I have to do. And
Right.
then I could study what I also wanted to study, which was math and physics. So
Right.
I really had a major in physics, but I also did all the coursework for a math major as well. So I had a double major. I just never went to the math office to register. So my degree was in physics, but it was physics and math, and I was doing music all the time, all
Right.
kinds of things. I played in 2, 3 different orchestras. My freshman year at Harvard, I was a fellow at Tanglewood Music Center. I played in the Colorado Philharmonic. I was conducting, I was performing, none of which would have been possible if I had gone to New England Conservatory or Juilliard. So for someone who, like yourself or like me, who has other academic interests, a music school is not a good solution. If the only thing you've ever wanted to do in your life is music, then music school is good because it gives you intensive focus and training on that. But it doesn't give you freedom, and it doesn't teach you entrepreneurship.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And well, I just again I can't agree more because that's one of the biggest reasons I quit the dual degree, because I realized at the end I have to pay something that I can do on my own, and then give that up and to make time for me to take the classes that actually benefit me as a whole. And then it comes to music, I can practice on my own. I can still take lessons with Mr. Gilad and my teachers in Chicago and
Exactly.
everything. I can do all of that on my own. And then that helped me to take off this music business I found. It's called HPMS Venture, that, we help students prepare for auditions and scholarships and get scholarship in music schools, basically. And that took off this year.
Oh, so you're helping kids prepare for college auditions and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I work with a guy here in Boston who
Hmm.
has a business like that, and he
Amazing.
does it for all kinds of high school kids. And whenever he has a high school kid who's interested in clarinet, he comes to me, and I give them a lesson and give them some coaching and give them some advice on college and stuff. But he has a whole sort of college application preparation service.
For
Is
music
that the kind of?
student?
I think he does it for all kinds of students,
Oh,
but
okay.
music is one area. And whenever he has someone who's a clarinetist, he comes to me. So
Amazing.
but that's an interesting business nowadays. It's taken off because college is very competitive, so people want to know, where should they apply, how should they do it.
We just helped a student coming off the wait list at Eastman, and then she at the end got almost a full tuition scholarship to play
Yeah,
cello, which is incredible because basically waitlist means rejection. But we
right.
did teach her how to follow up and all of that. But yeah, it's doing well. And but again, with the dual degree, I couldn't do this. I literally don't have time. I got to take 8 classes a quarter. That just
Exactly. Lots
and
of
most of the
classes
stuff.
and requirements, and they
Oh yeah,
want you to
yeah.
play in this group and play in that group, and and a lot of which you don't need. It's like when I went to Harvard, I wanted to take certain classes that they had in the music department,
Mhm.
but the first one I wanted to take was a conducting and orchestration class my first year.
Mhm.
And they said, "Oh no, you got to have 4 years of harmony and 3 years of theory and this and that." And so I said, "No, I don't need that." And they said, "Well, you can take a placement test." So now I had never taken any of these courses before in high school. They didn't have them really. But so I took the placement test. The week before, I read the Walter Piston harmony book, and I read another book, and I did some stuff. I took all these placement tests. I passed out of their entire music major of theory and harmony and analysis. And my first semester at Harvard, I was in the senior conducting an orchestration class. All the other kids in the class were seniors, and I was first year, you know.
Amazing.
But you can do that at Harvard. You couldn't. There's no way you could do that at a music school. And so I didn't want to have to take all those classes because, first of all, they're easy for me. And even if they're not easy, you don't need every single course. For example, at music schools, they insist that everybody take these courses in huge history classes that go way back to early music. You know, I learned some early music when I was in junior high school, and it's an interesting area, and I have many friends who are great early music performers. But I personally don't need to know a lot about that because I don't do that. It's not something I do. It's not something I interest. You need to know a little bit about it just from a perspective standpoint. But they teach this. Oh, you have to know about this composer and that composer and the other composer. My view of history, and when I teach my classes, is whatever you're going to learn about it carefully and in depth and in detail. So, you know, telling me that Palestrina wrote the Pope Marcellus Mass, which I learned, you know, when I was in the 7th grade. Okay, so what? I know that. I know nothing about Palestrina. And if I was interested in Palestrina, I would read 7 books on him and I would go into it. But in the music schools, they want every student to have these wide survey courses rather than deep classes. And I think whatever you're doing, whether it's music or math or science or physics or anything, deep is what's important, not wide, you know?
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that so much. I really do think, first of all, a lot of people are going for a degree in terms of getting the sheet of paper, especially for us. I mean, coming from, you know, international families, Asian parenting, that's a big thing, is to get the paper and get the name, which
Right.
I personally don't agree, because at the end, if you are this entrepreneur and you care so much about business, you rather want to have founded 10 successful businesses than getting a sheet of paper that
Of
certify you
course.
in business. At the end, it's a practical skill you got to practice, not sitting in the classroom. And I think that's the same exact thing for musicians. It's nowadays colleges are a lot about theories, which this is something really practical, down to earth. You got to practice. So that's why I feel like I've learned, I don't know, maybe over 95% of things that make who I am today outside of my classrooms. I didn't really feel like I learned so much in classrooms, to be honest.
Oh, oh, absolutely. I would say I've learned, 99% of what I know outside of classrooms.
Yeah,
Indeed, you know, I taught my son this. He's a very successful musician and entrepreneur and software engineer.
amazing.
And when he was young, he was very, we taught him from a young age to be very fast and learn on his own. He
Mm-hmm.
went to public school, but before he went to public school, he knew everything because we taught him at home. And when he was in high school, I said, look, if you want to get good offers from colleges and things, you should take lots of the AP tests,
Yeah.
the advanced placement tests,
Yep.
because the more you have, you could skip a year in college if you want and go do more things. So he decided he would start just learning various things. I think that 3/4 of the AP tests that he took were in subjects that he never had a class in. I said, all you got to do to learn the subject matter is go get the Barron's book, read it from cover to cover. It tells you everything about the subject, everything you need to know. It gives you sample tests, and you study it, you practice it, and you can do it. So he just started doing that on his own, and he had, I forget how many. I had like 5 when I went to Harvard. I think he had 11 or 12 AP tests that he got all 5s on. He was a national AP scholar. And I'd say out of that 11 or 12, 7 of them were subjects that he had never taken in high school. So when you go to college, it's even more true. You should basically and I tell this to my students, I say, look, all learning takes place on your own. Nobody can teach you anything.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big myth. Oh, they're going to teach me this. I can tell you methods of learning, and if you follow my instructions, you will learn. But the learning happens in your brain, not in mine, right?
Right.
So if you're a student and you want to learn, you have to actively learn. And the only way you learn is by thinking about it. In fact, one of the best ways of learning something is by teaching it.
Right.
I discovered this early on when I was in high school. I used to teach classes in math and other things to other people. And in order to teach them, I had to make sure I knew exactly what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned the stuff so that I could teach it, you know?
Amazing.
Um,
Yeah.
and people don't think that way. Now, too many people nowadays think they can just plunk themselves down in a class and somehow they're magically going to learn by sitting there. Um,
Right.
but no, real learning takes place on your own.
Right. And again, I see this happening, I think, with people around me at my school and also with my underclassmates and everybody, and especially parents. They still believe that, I mean, I think they are buying the tuition for security, which nowadays it just doesn't work like that anymore. There are a lot of elite institutions, and I think the degree, especially with elite schools, so many people graduate from there now. I mean, it's really overrated with the degree of paper. So a lot of people would do is they think they take this class, this class, this class, and then graduate, they're set. And I think for musicians as well, I mean, people go to Juilliard or Curtis at first, they would think that when they graduate, they will be over prepared and to face anything. But I don't think nowadays it work like that anymore. Do you agree with that?
Right. The thing about the paper, you know, getting the
Yeah.
master's degree or whatever, it all depends what you want to do. And if you're an entrepreneur, like exactly what you said, if you want to have successful business, the paper means absolutely nothing. Some of the most successful business people in the history of the world didn't even have degrees. Okay. If you want to be successful in business, you got to be a hard worker, you got to learn yourself, and you got to plow through failures and learn how to fix things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, but, and if you want to be a successful performer, you have to win auditions, period. End of story. I mean,
Right.
you know, people say,
You need to
oh, you shouldn't be
play.
competitive in music. Well, yeah, it's true. Music shouldn't, from a theoretical perspective, be competitive. But if you want to win a job, it is competitive. You have to win if you want to be a performer, at least at first. Eventually, if you can build your own solo career, like I've done, that's another thing. But even there, you're still competing. Every time someone's hiring someone as a soloist, you're competing, right? And so if you're going to be a performer, the degree almost doesn't matter. However, most people aren't ready to be a performer until they've studied a certain amount. So I always say to my students, yeah, you should be in school as long as you can until you get a great job. If you're a sophomore and studying with me and you get a job in the Chicago Symphony, I'll say go, drop out right now and go. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
but if you get a job in a local community orchestra, stay in school, obviously, because
Of
that's
course.
not a real, that's not a long-term job. That's a good thing while you're in school. So, I have friends who've done all that. My friend Bill Vermeulen, he
Mhm.
went to Northwestern, where you are.
Yep.
He's the longtime principal horn of the was it Cleveland or the Houston Symphony,
Yep.
right? And one of the greatest horn players in the world. He dropped out of Northwestern when he was, I think, 19 because he got a major job, and his teacher said go. All right.
Right. Of
So
course.
at that point, what the degree's meaningless. He got the job that he wanted, and from there, he's made a lifetime career as one of the great horn players in the world. And you learn what you need to know along the way. So it depends. However, now let's say you want to get a job as a teacher at a university,
That's different.
then you
Yep.
have to get, it's different because you have to get a doctorate, because none of them will even look at you if you don't have a doctorate.
Exactly.
Now,
Yep.
in my case, because I'm famous as a soloist and teacher, in some cases they will look at me, but even then they won't. I remember one time I was going to a festival. I was already very well known, and I'd been invited to a festival in Brazil, and it was a major international festival, and they were very excited to invite me. And the festival was being funded partially by the government there. So the guy who's organizing it emailed me and said, "So can you give me information about your degrees, your music degrees? Where'd you get your master's degree?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a master's degree." He said, "Well, where'd you get your music degrees?" I said, "Well, I don't have any degrees in music," because he needed to fill in this paperwork for the government. I said, "I have
Oh,
a
okay.
right." I said, "I just have a degree in physics from Harvard, an undergraduate degree." And because I decided, for example, I did my undergraduate at Harvard in 3 years because I got sophomore standing. I could have stayed a fourth year and in 1 year added a master's degree to it, because at that point I had enough credits. So in 4 years, I could have had my undergrad and master's. But I decided not to, because I said in physics, a master's degree is useless. If you want to be a physics person, you have to have a PhD, right?
Right.
And so unless I was going to go, and at that point I decided I didn't want to be in physics full time, you know. So I said, well, the master's degree is useless. So I just left Harvard. I have my bachelor's degree. But so it depends on what you want to do. Now, if I had wanted to get a PhD, then I would have stayed that fourth year if I wanted to go on in physics. But the point of this was that guy in Brazil wanted to know this stuff. In the end, he said, okay, I'll just tell him, you know, you're world famous and so forth. I said, you know, where'd you get your doctorate from? They often ask me. I say, well, I don't have a doctorate in music, but I have lots of students who've gotten doctorates, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's like what Elon Musk says, right? Like he didn't go to Harvard, but the people who work for him did. So it's something like that. All of those are great. I relate so much again to all of that.
as a teacher, sometimes you need that credential if you want to get a certain job. So you have to decide what's your plan, what path do you want to go down, and then go with that in mind, you know.
Yeah. Also, the last thing we're going to talk about school before I move on is I see so many students are very insecure nowadays. So they would rather do something that's easy and they're super good at, instead of they really need that skill and protect their GPA, instead of doing something that's really going to teach them something but super hard, so you might crash your GPA. So for me, I've always been this person who's better than in literature, arts, and all that stuff. I was never good at science and math, but I'm taking econ, business, and math right now. It's hard. It's so hard for me, but I'm taking that because I know one day I try to strive as an entrepreneur. That's basic stuff needed for finance and everything. I got to know that skill, and I'm taking some coding. I never learned computer programming before, and now I know how to build basic websites and then how to write, JavaScript, and then some Python, all that stuff. It's really basic, but I think that's all I need. Versus going hard, deep core in engineering. But a lot of people would just go with the easiest classes in college and then get a 4.0, which I think at the end is truly meaningless.
It is, and this is something I teach in general, which is whatever subject you're learning, whether it's math or clarinet playing or how to play soccer, doesn't matter. The process is the same, because it all has to do with training your brain. And when you're training your brain, if you're not, most people like to constantly do things that they already can do, because it's comfortable and it feels good.
Yep.
And it gets you no learning, which is, so if you walk around a music school like Juilliard, you'll hear 99% of the students practicing incorrectly. I call it anti-practice. What they do is they're repeating phrases over and over again. And if you repeat something that you can already do, it's a complete waste of your time, because the circuit is already built in your brain. And so what you'll hear people do in music is they'll play a phrase, they make a mistake, let's say in bar 20, right? And then they go back to bar 1 and they play it again. And then they make the mistake again. But instead of, when they make the mistake in bar 20, they should focus solely on that note or that bar. But they don't. Why? Because it's frustrating. That's the part that they can't do. So they don't want to focus on it. So I always say it's called deep practice. You have to focus exclusively, only on the things that you can't do, which is very frustrating. Mm. So if you're not frustrated 90% of the time when you're practicing, then you're not practicing. If you're feeling good about your practice, you're not practicing. And that's what most people do. They're just playing the stuff they can already play. You have to be playing the stuff that you can't play all the time. And then you're thousands of times more efficient. And that's why people who have studied this, it's called the study of acquisition of expertise, because it doesn't matter what field. It's true of every field of learning, because it's a brain thing. Mm-hmm. If you focus on the stuff that you can't do exclusively, and then consciously think, okay, how do I have to fix this? Those are the people that excel, not twice as fast, but 10 or 100 or 1,000 times as fast as other people. Not because they're smarter, not because they're more talented, but because they're focusing and working harder on the things that they can't do. And unfortunately, many musicians are not willing to do that because they've been told all their lives happy talk. Many musicians are told happy talk. Oh, that was wonderful. Oh,
Oh
that's so
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So I always say, positive reinforcement is the least important part of becoming a good performer. You need a little bit of positive enforcement to get people in a receptive state of mind. If
Hmm.
all you ever do to them is say, "Oh, you're terrible, you're horrible, that's terrible, terrible," and if that's all they hear, eventually they're going to get discouraged and go away. But if you want to be a performer, first of all, you got to be tough, number one, and so you give them a little bit. It's like sugar, right? A little bit of sugar is good, right? Too much sugar, you get fat and sick, right? So you give them a little bit of positive enforcement and a lot of critical, what people might call negative. It's not negative. Negative would be saying, just telling someone that's bad and not telling them how to fix it. But if you say, no, that's bad, and here's how you fix it, that is what you need to do. But you do need to tell them it's bad because they don't know that it's bad at first. If
Right.
someone plays with an ugly sound, they don't know that that was an ugly sound until you say that's an ugly sound. So you have to give them a little bit of positive, lots of negative and constructive. Unfortunately, most teachers don't do that. Most teachers give 98% sugar and 2% of what they need. And most students practice 98% of what they already can do and not the stuff that they need to learn.
Right. Yeah. When I transferred to Idlewood Arts Academy in high school, I was recruited with almost a full ride to take the opportunity to study with UD Gilad, and then when I started studying with him for the entire life of mine, I've been this best performer of my previous teachers. They were really giving me compliments over criticism a lot of times. And then so that made me feel really good. But when I started studying with Mr. Gilad, everything changes. I suddenly became, I thought, this worst player he's ever seen in his life. But to be
Uh-huh.
honest, he was just being hard on me because he was
Right.
100% honest. And he would tell you, sound like crap, when you truly sound like that. And he would tell you when you sound good, which happened probably like maximum 10 times in total
Right.
in 2 years. But the thing is, it's very subtle. It's when the teacher tells that, and 99% of the time they're super hard. When they tell you that that's good, that feels really, really good.
Right.
It feels amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you see, if they're just giving you the happy talk, you're not improving. Okay. And so I remember I coached at one point an artist diploma, very high level woodwind
Right.
quintet that then now has become a famous woodwind quintet, Vento Chiaro. And they were created under me as artist diploma students at Longy. And when I first started coaching them, I was very nice because they were very advanced and they were already quite good, So, but
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how good you are. I can still tell you 1,000 things that will improve you, right? So you have to pick and choose. But so at the coachings, I was saying some nice things to them, and then they've eventually said to me, because they were already in their mid late 20s,
Oh yeah.
they said, "Oh, you gotta give us more variety of adjectives. You have to come up with
Mhm.
more adjectives and than wonderful, fantastic. So I said, okay, we're going to develop a scale
Mhm.
here, and we're going to start with at the bottom of the scale. The first compliment level will be that wasn't totally disgusting. So that was a compliment. Okay. So that wasn't total. That was the first step. It's
That's
like
funny.
Mahler. If you look at how Mahler marked his music, he had
Oh
a whole
yeah.
variety of very subtle phrases in German that he used because, accelerando, he had like 5 different ways of saying accelerando, which meant slightly different things.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I came up with this whole list that started with that wasn't totally disgusting, or that, and then a level above with that was that sounds like something vaguely and distantly related to music. So that was the next level up. So you many steps before you got to that was great. And so the point is, And then I would get into specifics. When I'm teaching someone, and I don't care if they're a high-level professional player or a young student, as I listen to them, I can hear 1,000 things that are wrong with their playing, okay? Because I'm doing critical analysis, and I do the same when I practice myself. The point is, when you're teaching, you can't tell them all 1,000 things at once. It's not enough time. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to prioritize, and you have to say, okay, in this 1 hour lesson, he just played a small segment of a piece and there's 1,000 things wrong with it. I'm going to pick the top 3 things, the most important 3 that are specific to this piece and that he's got a problem with. And we're going to focus in on those. And I'm going to show the person how to instantly fix it and make it better. This is another one of the myths of music. That the people who say, oh, you have to go back and practice these etudes for 6 months before you're going to be able to do that. That's nonsense. Any problem in music performance or anything can be solved immediately. Now, and I can show that to any student. Now, you may not be able to do it consistently immediately, and that's where the practice comes in.
Agreed,
but I can show you, if you slow something down enough and take it apart enough, I can show you exactly how to do it immediately. And so I show that to the student. I say, do this, 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 and this. Boom. There, you did it just now. That's the first time you've ever done that. Now you need to take that, practice that, and build that up. And this is something that people aren't normally willing to do because it's frustrating. The only difference between the greatest players in the world, willingness to focus and deal with frustration. The best players focused a lot. It's not talent. Talent is a fake. There really isn't talent for the most part. There certainly are areas where people have a physical disability, and then they're going to have a problem. But 99% of every subject of learning has to do with focus, study, and willingness to deal with frustration. So yeah, I mean, it's about that willingness to focus and deal with the frustration of learning new things that you can't already do. People much prefer to just repeat the things that they already know. It's fun,
Yeah, exactly. So you think that's what separates the good players from, that's what separates the excellent players from the good players.
That's the only thing. And the same is true of soccer players or mathematicians. It's the exact same thing. There was a study done once of little kids, I think I was going to tell you, where they put some little kids in a room and they put some candy in front of them, right?
Oh yeah,
like chocolate or something.
I know this. Yeah, I know this experience.
Right, and then they said, okay, we got to go away for a minute. Don't eat that chocolate.
Right.
But when I come back, I'm going to give you twice as much chocolate. I'll give you another chocolate bar. But you can't eat the one that's in front of you or you won't get it. So most of the little kids just eat the one that's in front of them, even though they know that if they waited, they could get twice as much, right? Most of them eat it. So then what they did is they looked at the success, intelligence, future grades, life outcomes of those kids over the years. The ones who waited and didn't eat the chocolate and waited for the next one uniformly had vastly better outcomes in life.
Right.
Why? Because they were willing to deal with the frustration of learning that if you wait for this, you're going to get something better. The other ones wanted immediate gratification, so they ate the chocolate. This is true of all people. And so the people who succeed are the ones who are willing to deal with the frustration and keep at it.
Exactly. For me, I think the process means way more than the result. And for me, I think that really puts a whole different mindset. Once you do something, you start to do something else, and then you go down the road, and it's way more likely to do a bunch of crazy things that can't tell you enough, So, but a lot of friends will look at me like, Steven, you're this nerd. I don't think most people really understand that time is one of the most valuable things that we have. And
right.
And that a lot of results we won't see after 5 years, 10 years. And then when you see it, it's going to be something quite impressive. Amazing, Mr. Cohler. I appreciate your time. I know we talked for a long time. I wish we could talk more, but just to save your time. And then, I truly appreciate our conversation. It's really insightful, and certainly we resonate a lot. So thank you so much for bringing us value.